I'm very interested in these wood samples and the soil samples. So I'm going to head down to the lab.
The results are incredible, fantastic.
This might connect you to where the treasure may be. This might connect you to a direction that you need to go.
For centuries, Oak Island has remained one of the world's most mysterious treasure legends. Generations of treasure hunters have searched beneath its soil. Millions of dollars have been spent, and countless drilling operations have uncovered clues, but never the final answer. Now, newly revealed scans, deep drilling data, and mysterious underground anomalies are putting Oak Island back in the spotlight. Some claims suggest that investigators may have identified a hidden chamber potentially connected to a legendary $410 million Templar treasure. But there is one major problem. The existence of this treasure chamber has not been officially confirmed. So what exactly has been discovered beneath Oak Island? Could these strange signals finally point to the centuries-old secret that treasure hunters have been searching for? Or could the evidence lead to something even more unexpected? Stay with us until the end, because as we follow the latest clues, each discovery raises the stakes, and the final piece of evidence could change how we understand the Oak Island mystery forever. And if you love mysteries, lost treasure, ancient history, and unexplained discoveries, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and join us for more incredible investigations. Now, let's uncover what is really happening beneath Oak Island. For decades, Oak Island has been subjected to one drilling operation after another. Each attempt seemed to uncover another fragment of the mystery, yet the answers always remained just out of reach. Instead of solving the money pit, every new discovery seemed to create even more questions. Over time, many began to wonder whether the island would ever reveal what was truly hidden beneath it. But this time, something was different. Rather than moving to another location, the team chose to return to the area where some of the most unusual signals had appeared during previous investigations. Their goal was no longer simply to find another clue. They wanted to bring together everything they had learned over the years and determine whether those separate discoveries were actually connected. To do that, geologists went back through years of drilling records, borehole information, core samples, geological reports, and data collected using newer scanning technologies. As the information was compared side by side, several details began pointing toward the same underground region. Some boreholes had revealed unusual voids. Other investigations had produced indications of metallic material. Fragments of old wood had also been recovered from certain areas. Individually, none of these findings could prove what was beneath the island, but when viewed together, they created a pattern that was difficult for the team to ignore. One possibility began to emerge. Perhaps previous drilling operations had reached only the outer edge of a much larger underground structure, while the most important section remained deeper below the surface. That possibility changed the way the next target was selected. Instead of relying on historical maps or a single piece of evidence, the team combined old survey information with modern 3D imaging, geological models, and data from previous drilling operations. The objective was to identify the most promising location with greater precision than ever before. If their calculations were correct, the next drilling operation could reveal information far more significant than anything discovered during earlier attempts. For the team, this was no longer simply another excavation. It represented the culmination of years of research, drilling, analysis, and unanswered questions. At the same time, it is important to remember that there is still no official confirmation of buried treasure or of the alleged $410 million Templar treasure chamber. the evidence remains preliminary, and the theory has yet to be proven through direct excavation and scientific testing. Still, the growing number of unusual signs was enough to increase expectations. Rick Lagina and the rest of the team understood that every additional foot drilled into the island could potentially provide another piece of the puzzle. The scans that changed the search. After months of reviewing historical records and developing a new strategy, the team decided that drilling alone was no longer enough. Before putting another drill into the ground, they needed a much clearer understanding of what might be hidden beneath the surface. That meant turning to advanced scanning technology. Ground-penetrating radar, high-resolution geophysical surveys, 3D imaging, and other techniques were used to examine the underground environment from multiple angles. Then the first results began appearing on the screens. One unusual signal after another started showing up across the target area. The team remained cautious. No one immediately declared that they had found a chamber or treasure. But there was a noticeable difference in the data, and everyone in the room understood that these signals deserved a much closer examination. Several deep anomalies appeared to have characteristics that differed from the surrounding geological formations. Some areas appeared to contain possible voids, while other patterns seemed to show unusually defined boundaries. Were these simply natural formations created by geological processes, or were they evidence of something constructed beneath the island? At this stage, nobody could say for certain, but the area had suddenly become much more interesting. When the first detailed 3D models were generated, the team gathered around the screens and began examining the underground structures. Rick Lagina, the geologists, and the other experts compared the new images against older borehole records and drilling results. Something remarkable began to happen. Clues that had once appeared unrelated started lining up with one another. A signal from one investigation seemed to correspond with an anomaly recorded during another. Previous drilling locations suddenly became more relevant when viewed alongside the new 3D models. It was almost as if years of scattered evidence were slowly being assembled into a single picture. Because of this, the team decided that future drilling targets should be determined primarily by what the new scans revealed, rather than relying only on historical assumptions. But once again, there is an important distinction. The scans do not prove that treasure exists beneath Oak Island, and they do not confirm the alleged $410 million Templar chamber. At this point, the unusual signals can only be considered potential anomalies that require further scientific investigation. The real test would come when drilling reached those locations, and the recovered material could be examined in detail. If future drilling, core samples, and laboratory analysis confirm that the anomalies are genuine underground structures, then the chamber theory could become much more significant. The chamber theory emerges. As additional scanning reports and drilling information were analyzed, one possibility began receiving more attention than the others. Could the repeated underground anomalies actually represent a hidden chamber? The theory was still far from proven. It was based on early interpretations of geological data, scanning results, and the apparent shape of the underground formations. But there was something about the pattern that kept the team's attention focused on the same area. If the interpretation eventually proves correct, it could represent one of the most important turning points in Oak Island's more than 2-century-old treasure hunt. For generations, people have searched the island hoping to discover what lies beneath the money pit and surrounding areas. Now, modern technology is giving investigators a completely different way to examine the mystery. Instead of simply drilling and hoping for a breakthrough, the team can first map the underground environment, identify unusual areas, compare them with historical evidence, and then choose drilling targets based on the strongest available data. And according to the early 3D models and geological information, one particular area was beginning to stand out. The question now was no longer simply whether something unusual existed beneath Oak Island. The real question was what that anomaly actually represented, and what the next drill could finally reveal. Some experts began to wonder whether the unusual data could indicate the presence of a large enclosed space buried deep beneath Oak Island. There was still disagreement about exactly how deep it might be or how large the structure could be, but one point kept coming up again and again. The signals did not appear to behave like the surrounding natural rock. In certain sections, the scans seemed to reveal unusually straight patterns. In others, the data suggested spaces that could potentially represent underground voids. And that immediately raised a much bigger question. Were these formations simply the result of natural geological activity, or could they be remnants of something deliberately constructed by humans centuries ago? That question inevitably brought the Templar theory back into the conversation. For decades, some researchers and treasure hunters have speculated that Oak Island could somehow be connected to stories surrounding the Knights Templar. According to this theory, if an important artifact, document, or valuable treasure had ever been secretly transported to the island, its protectors may have needed a sophisticated underground system to conceal it. A hidden chamber, tunnels, barriers, and carefully designed traps would certainly fit the kind of scenario imagined by supporters of the theory. But there is an important problem. Historians have repeatedly pointed out that there is currently no direct evidence proving that the Knights Templar ever came to Oak Island or that they buried a treasure there. For that reason, the Templar connection remains a theory rather than an established historical fact. So for now, two worlds continue to overlap on Oak Island, documented history on one side and centuries-old mystery on the other. And the most important point remains unchanged. There has been no official confirmation of a hidden chamber, a Templar treasure, or the alleged $410 million discovery. The only way to move beyond speculation would be through physical evidence. That meant the team had to drill. The biggest drilling operation. After studying the new scans and geological information, the team understood that computer models alone could never provide the final answer. The evidence they needed was buried deep beneath the island. So the operation moved from digital analysis to physical excavation. Large drilling rigs were brought onto the site, along with powerful hydraulic systems, specialized equipment, and teams of engineers and geological experts. Every machine had a specific purpose: reach the underground anomalies that had generated so much interest. But getting there was anything but simple. As the drill descended farther into the earth, the conditions became increasingly difficult. In some sections, extremely hard rock slowed progress. In other areas, water and unstable soil created additional complications. The engineers were forced to adjust drilling angles more than once to keep the equipment operating safely while maintaining a path toward the targeted zone. Every decision mattered. A single mistake could damage expensive machinery, delay the operation for days, or force the team to abandon a carefully planned drilling path. That was why the crew moved with extraordinary caution. Yet the drilling continued. Day after day, the operation ran for long hours, with machine operators, engineers, geologists, and support crews working together to examine every piece of material brought back to the surface. Whenever a new core emerged from underground, it was immediately handled with care and prepared for examination. Everyone at the site was focused on the same question. Would the next core sample finally reveal something capable of solving a mystery that had survived for more than 2 centuries? With every additional foot, the anticipation became stronger, but so did the pressure. An operation of this scale required enormous resources: heavy machinery, fuel, specialized personnel, laboratory work, and continuous drilling all came with significant costs. Still, the team believed the effort was justified if the unusual geological signals eventually proved to be something more than natural formations. If the anomalies turned out to represent a genuine underground structure, this operation could become one of the most significant investigations ever carried out on Oak Island. But once again, there was still no confirmed evidence of the alleged $410 million Templar treasure chamber. The answer would have to come from the ground itself. The first signs from below, after days of relentless drilling, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. A core sample from deep underground reached the surface. The cylindrical section of earth and rock was carefully removed, and for a moment, everyone focused on the sample. At first glance, there appeared to be nothing extraordinary about it. It looked like an ordinary mixture of rock, soil, and sediment. But as the geologists examined it more closely, several details began to attract their attention. The atmosphere around the drilling site changed. No one immediately announced a breakthrough. The team understood that unusual material does not automatically mean treasure or human construction. Still, the sample appeared different enough to justify a much deeper investigation. Some sections appeared to contain fibrous material that resembled fragments of old wood. Other portions produced indications that could potentially be associated with metallic material. There were also variations in color, texture, and composition that appeared different from the surrounding geological layers. But what caused these differences? Were they simply the result of natural geological processes, or could they represent traces of human activity from the distant past? At this stage, nobody had the answer. That is why the samples were carefully preserved rather than immediately handled or discarded. Every fragment could contain information that might later become important. The next step was scientific testing. The recovered cores were separated according to their characteristics and prepared for laboratory analysis. Specialists began examining their composition, chemical properties, and possible age. Geologists worked alongside material scientists and laboratory experts to determine whether the unusual features could be explained naturally or whether they might indicate that humans had once interacted with the area. Every laboratory report now carried enormous importance: a tiny piece of wood, an unusual mineral signature, or a trace of metal might seem insignificant on its own. But when combined with the underground scans and previous drilling records, even the smallest discovery could influence where the team drilled next. And as the testing continued, one thing became increasingly clear: the mystery beneath Oak Island was far from over. As the first laboratory reports began to arrive, the atmosphere around the team became increasingly tense and hopeful. Some specialists felt that the early results were unusual enough to warrant a much deeper investigation. Others remained more skeptical, reminding everyone that preliminary evidence could easily be misunderstood. No one wanted to make a dramatic announcement before the facts were fully established. For that reason, the team agreed that every laboratory report would go through multiple levels of review. Where necessary, additional specialists and independent experts would also be asked to examine the material. There was still no official confirmation of a Templar treasure, a hidden underground chamber, or the alleged $410 million discovery. But the first core samples had demonstrated something important. The investigation was producing enough unusual material to keep the Oak Island mystery alive. Could Oak Island be connected to the Templars? As more core samples and scanning results emerged, a theory that had existed for generations once again moved into the center of the conversation: the Knights Templar theory. For decades, some researchers have speculated that Oak Island could somehow be connected to the medieval order of knights associated with the protection of valuable religious and historical objects. Supporters of the theory suggest that if the Templars ever needed to conceal something extremely valuable, an isolated island containing complex underground structures would have provided an intriguing hiding place. But there is a major problem with that theory. Despite centuries of speculation and repeated searches, no conclusive evidence has established a direct connection between the Knights Templar and Oak Island. Still, discoveries made on the island over the last 2 centuries have repeatedly caused people to revisit the possibility. Reports of old wooden structures, unusual stone formations, historical objects, and suspected underground passages have all contributed to the belief that something much larger might be hidden beneath the surface. Yet every one of these clues can potentially have more than one explanation. A wooden structure, for example, does not automatically prove a secret tunnel. An unusual stone arrangement does not necessarily indicate an ancient construction, and an underground void does not automatically mean a treasure chamber. That is why scientists continue to urge caution. Historians themselves remain divided. Some believe the Templar possibility should not be completely dismissed, especially if future discoveries produce evidence that has not yet been seen. Others argue that without a historical document, archaeological artifact, or scientifically verified connection, the theory remains speculation. And this disagreement is precisely what keeps the Oak Island mystery alive. On one side are the physical clues coming from drilling, scanning, geological analysis, and laboratory testing. On the other are centuries of theories, legends, and unanswered historical questions. For now, neither side has enough evidence to provide the final answer. And once again, there is still no official confirmation of a Templar treasure, a hidden chamber, or the alleged $410 million treasure. Where did the $410 million figure come from? As additional drilling results and scanning reports began circulating, one particular number started appearing more frequently than almost any other: $410 million. Reports across social media, online treasure hunting communities, and various internet sources began suggesting that if the suspected underground structure eventually turned out to contain a major historical treasure, its potential value could reach approximately $410 million. But this figure needs to be understood correctly. It is an estimate and part of a theory, not an officially established valuation. The reasoning behind the estimate is relatively simple. If an underground chamber were ever proven to contain ancient gold coins, silver objects, rare artifacts, manuscripts, or historically significant items, their value would not be determined simply by weighing the precious metals. Historical artifacts can be worth vastly more than their raw material because of their rarity, age, provenance, cultural importance, and historical significance.